Hey y'all, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. I'm in a really weird place mentally today, and so my energy levels are a little low, but I need to get this video filmed, so we're just gonna roll with it, but I don't have a whole ton of pep in my step today. So we're gonna get through this. But I really wanted to film a recent reads video. I am trying to do these more often so that I'm not talking about like 15 to 20 books in each one of these videos, but I do have a whole ton of books to talk about. I actually have 15 right now. I don't know if I'm going to talk about all 15. I might break this up into a couple of videos. So let's just get right into the wrap-ups. So the first two books I am going to talk about, I actually have a vlog for. I will link that vlog up in the cards as well as down in the description box. So I'm not going to go too far into these, but they are The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James and The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. These were both March Book of the Month picks, and I read them for that reading vlog. I gave them both 4 stars. I liked them a whole lot. Simone St. James is one of my favorite thriller authors, and she writes like paranormal thrillers, and The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley is a closed door mystery, and I really liked both of them. Like I said, I have full reviews where I chat about both of these, so you can go check out that video if you want more information, but I gave these both 4 stars. They were really, really fun, and it was fun to mix up some of my readings since I've been in a massive romance mood. After that, I read an arc of If You Ask Me by Libby Huscher, and unfortunately I gave this one 2.5 stars. I was just not the biggest fan of this book. There were a lot of things thrown into this book, and it ended up feeling like the book lacked direction because it just tried to take on too many things. So in this, we are following this woman who is a like advice columnist, and she might be getting like a syndication, like a national syndication, and she ends up going home early one day and she finds her husband cheating on her, and that kind of like shifts her career a little bit because she doesn't know how to give advice to people when her life is now kind of crumbling, and so she takes out a lot of her aggression on her advice columns. And so people who are writing into her, like asking for like polite ways to handle things, she ends up giving them like really aggressive ways and kind of like feisty answers, and she goes viral because of it. In this process, she ends up meeting a local firefighter, and the two of them have a romance. There were just too many things in here, and then this is gonna be minor spoilery, but there is kind of this plot at the end where the heroine is blamed for a lot of things that were not her fault and outside of her control. And so there are things that happen like with her article that kind of causes a lot of negative press around her, and none of it was really her fault. It was somebody else doing these things, and everyone's like, well, you need to take responsibility for it. And I was like, but why? Like, there was just a lot of almost like victim blaming in it, and it started to bother me. And so this one was a bit of a mess. It was cute, I guess, but I never really connected to any one part of it. After that, I went into Bittersweet Surrender by QB Tyler, and this is a forbidden romance. So this is the first part of a duet, and I did read the second part as well, so I guess I'll talk about them both. But I did read the last half of this in a vlog, which I will also link up in the cards. But so Bittersweet Surrender, I ended up giving 3.5 stars, and Bittersweet Addiction, which is the sequel, I unfortunately gave 2 stars. I really liked the first book. So the first book opens up with our heroine who is married, and a year ago she asked for a divorce from her husband because their marriage is kind of falling apart. Her husband doesn't really like see her or like put forth any effort into their relationship, and she feels like they've really grown apart and like they're not connecting anymore. She asks for a divorce, and he begs her to try again, and so they go into couples therapy. While they are in their marriage counseling, she ends up building this connection with her therapist. The two of them end up having an affair. Huge content warnings for cheating. You go into this pretty much knowing who she's gonna pick out of these couples. Like, there's no real, I don't want to call this like a love triangle because there's never really any question about who she's going to choose. But in this first book, you were kind of following that affair, how it changes her current relationship. And then in the sequel, you were following her and the guy that she chooses and all of the consequences of what happened in book one. In the first book, I really liked it. It was really angsty and over the top. And QB Tyler's writing is so steamy. And so I really enjoyed that first book. Unfortunately, in the second book, there is an additional plot that is introduced. So there are so many things covered in here. There are so many plot elements. So on top of it being a cheating romance, there's also like an assault plotline. There is a like physical abuse plotline. There is in the second book an addiction plotline. And so there were a lot of things. And unfortunately, the addiction element in the second book I did not think was handled very well. There are some comments that are made about addiction. In that last book, he ends up going to therapy for 7 days and he comes out saying that he's all better, and it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I didn't feel like it handled addiction in a way that represented it correctly, and I didn't think it did a good job of showing any of the impact it can have on relationships, it can have on that person, like the long-term effects that can have. I just felt like it did a major disservice to people with addiction, and so I just did not like that element. It rubbed me the wrong way throughout the whole book, and because of that, in the end, I ended up giving it 2 stars. So it's one of those series that like I could not put these books down. They were highly addictive, but upon reflection, that second book just kind of ruined it for me. The first book I did think was a really like entertaining, and you could read it as a standalone. There are things that are left dangling at the end, but in all honesty, they're not really addressed in the second book anyways. There were a lot of threads that were just kind of abandoned. So I don't know. Overall, the series was just fine. And then I picked up The League of Gentlewoman Witches by India Holton. This is the sequel to The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, and I gave this one 5 stars. I just adore this series. It is so unique and quirky and different. In this, it is set in Victorian London, so it's a historical romance, but it's also fantastical. So all of these Victorian women are pirates or witches, but they fly houses. So there is this magical spell, and if you say that spell, anything can fly. And so the pirates fly houses around and have battles, and the witches know the same spell, but they try to be really subtle about their magic rather than being like ostentatious and like flying around houses for the public to see. They try to keep their magic more secret. The pirates and the witches kind of have this like battle back and forth. And in this book, we were following a witch, the female who's a witch, and then a male pirate. And the two of them end up having to team up to try and get to this like relic or something, magical talisman or something like that. And they have a romance, and this was so much fun. It was really cute. I adored our hero so much, and our heroine is really feisty and kind of coming into her own because she feels kind of like bogged down by all of the rules of the witches, and she doesn't feel like she can really be herself. But when she teams up with this pirate, she kind of is able to like let loose and kind of come into her own. And I loved their romance. I love the fantastical elements. India Holton's writing is so funny and quirky and just different, and I loved this book just as much as book one. From there, I went into Moonstruck by Onley James, and this is the 3rd book in the Necessary Evil series. I have talked about this series so much because I am completely obsessed with this series. This follows Atticus, who is like the oldest of the brothers. He was the first one that was adopted, and all of these adopted brothers are psychopaths and serial killers. And in this one, you are learning all about Atticus as he falls in love with Jericho. I gave this 5 stars. I actually went back and upped my rating of the other 2 to 5 stars as well because I am just wholly obsessed with this series. The romances are so possessive and amazing, and I love them so much. And Atticus is essentially like a lost puppy that just needs to be told what to do, and it was so cute. He's like this big psychopathic serial killer, and he needs somebody to tell him what to do and take care of him, and it was It was adorable. I loved them so much. There are like scenes like right at the beginning. Atticus is complaining about how much he hates killing because it's dirty and messy, and he doesn't like getting dirty. And so he shows up to kill this guy, and that's the first time he meets Jericho, because Jericho is already like in the process of torturing him. So Atticus just sits down and starts eating a granola bar. And like he's like, if you want to do it for me, I don't have to get muddy then. And it's just, their romance was amazing. I loved them so much. I am planning to start the next book. I actually have it like right over there, and I'm going to start it within the next couple of days. And then the 5th book just got postponed until April 3rd, I think. So it just got pushed back like 4 days. So I am going to continue on with the series as soon as I can. After that, I picked up a book I actually didn't know if I was going to read, and that was The War of Two Queens by JLA. This is the 4th book in the Blood and Ash series, and I have not been quiet about this, but I hated Crown of Gilded Bones. I thought it was such a disappointment of a book. I think I gave it 2 stars, and so I was on the fence about continuing on. And then all of the controversy surrounding this book happened, and I was like, well, now I need to read it. I gave this one 4 stars. I actually really liked this book. It was really action-packed. There wasn't that like weird pacing issue where things would like slow down and stop while they chatted, and then like the plot would pick up and then they would stop and then they would have the same conversations. Like, this was really fast-paced. Poppy goes through a really big like character growth in here. I felt like that I really enjoyed this book. So if you haven't heard the controversy surrounding this book, in the From Blood and Ash series, Poppy and Castile are kind of this like fated couple, and they are madly in love. But Castile has a best friend, Kieran, and Kieran and Castile were supposed to be, it's called joined, and essentially one of them cannot die without the other dying. And in this, Castile is kind of like held captive at the beginning, and Kieran and Poppy need to work together to try and save Castile. And for some reason, people were saying that it felt like emotional cheating, and I have to strongly disagree. Strongly. Like, I read one where it's like it was emotional cheating because she slept in Kieran's shirt. But like, if you read that scene, Kieran, first of all, her clothes were dirty, so she needed to clean her clothes, and so Kieran gave her a shirt to sleep in. But she has a nightmare about losing Castile, and so Kieran sleeps next to her to like try and help comfort her. So like, it all had to do with Castile. So then they save Castile, and the 3 of them end up doing the joining. And I don't know if this is me as a romance reader coming at this differently than people who are like a fantasy reader, but this was the tamest threesome I've ever read in my whole life. Like, Kieran is barely involved. Like, he's essentially like a third-party observer. So I don't know why people were so like heartbroken over this romance being ruined, because I'm like, nothing happened. Like, I was ready for that threesome to go absolutely wild. And I was like, so I don't know why people were so upset about this one. Like, it was a very, very tame threesome. Like I said, Kieran essentially just watches. So I don't know why everyone was so upset about this, but I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. I loved where it ended up. And like, this, I will say my one holdup of the series is I do not understand the lore, like, at all. There are too many gods, and they all have really, really similar names. I don't always follow all of it, but I'm enjoying it. I'm excited to see where it goes from here, so I do plan to continue on with that. After that, I had 2 DNFs, and again, I talked about this in a vlog, but essentially I was going to do a fantasy reading vlog, and I'm starting to come to terms with the fact that high fantasy is just not my jam. But I DNF'd The City of Dusk by Tara Sim and The Bone Orchard by Sarah Mueller. I had both of these for review, and City of Dusk was a high fantasy about like these heirs to gods, and all of their kingdoms are kind of like separated from each other, and they're trying to come back together to save magic and all this stuff. And then The Bone Orchard is about like a bone magician, and like she has different voices in her head and she can give them bodies, and like both of them were just not for me. Like, I'm like I said, I'm coming to terms with the fact that if it doesn't have romance in it, I don't really want to read it, except for the occasional like mystery thriller. But this just didn't work for me. I didn't understand the world. It was just too much. Like, so I DNF'd both of those. And then after that, I read Make Me Yours by Melanie Harlow. And this is another book that was in a vlog. Actually, the next couple of books were all in that vlog. So I will, again, link that vlog in all the places. But this I ended up giving 3.5 stars. This is part of the Belmay Creek series, and I read book 1 like a year or two ago, and I gave that one 5 stars. I really, really liked it. It was fun. Melanie Harlow just writes these really cute small town rom-com-esque romances. They're really sweet. They're really adorable. And this one was a single dad romance, and he is falling in love with his best friend's younger sister who is living next door to him. They are older. He's like 33, she's 30, so there's not like a big age gap or anything. This was really cute. Their relationship was really sweet. Our hero has anxiety and panic attacks, which I really liked. So his wife died in childbirth, and he's bottled up a lot of his trauma because since his wife died on the same day that he had to take his daughter home, he's kind of never he's never really had the time to process all of his grief because he was so like caught up in taking care of this child on his own. So he's kind of just like pushed all of his own internal issues aside. And now that he's entering into a new relationship, all of that starts to resurface, all of his fear of commitment and falling in love and then losing that person again. So I really liked that exploration. There was just a couple of things in here that I didn't love. Our hero makes some comments about how therapy is for women and not for men. And there was just a couple of those. Most of them are challenged, but there were just some comments about like gender and things like that, which always irritates me in a book when something is called like masculine. I don't know. Genderizing things always kind of like irks me. And this did it a lot. So that's the only thing that kept it from being like an all-time favorite. After that was Frat Wars, Master of Mayhem by Saxon James, and I gave this like 4.5 stars. I love this series. This series is no angst. It is a college romance. All of our heroes are part of a fraternity, and they are finishing up their senior year. In the first book, we are following Chad, who discovers that he knows he's bisexual, but he starts in his first like same-sex relationship. It was really cute and really fun. He's like kind of this prankster. And this book is following his best friend Robbie, and Robbie is just now starting to explore his sexuality, and he ends up getting really close with this guy Brandon. They have always had this like really, really close friendship, and it's an opposite attracts romance because Robbie is like this big goofball and really lighthearted, and Brandon is their frat's risk manager. So he is kind of uptight and soft-spoken and things like that. And the two of them end up forming a relationship, and it was so sweet, and I loved them so much. Brandon has my whole heart. He was the most precious character, and I adored them. I love the series. We're getting one more book in this series, and I'm very excited for it. And then the last 2 books I'm going to talk about, one was a DNF, and that was Black Lies by Alessandra Torr. This was a DNF. I do not like when mental health is used as a plot twist. This is a pretty old book, and so I do think that this was probably seen less often at the time that this book came out, but just I don't know why authors keep thinking that having DID as a plot twist is a good idea. It's not. So I did not like this at all. DNF'd it. And then the final book that I read that I'm just going to talk about really quick is Empire Storms by Sarah J Maas. I have been rereading this series again, this time on audio. I gave this 5 stars. This is my favorite of the entire series. Queen of Shadows did give this a run for its money this time around, but I just adore the series. I get goosebumps in the last like 100 pages every single time I read this one. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of like my falling asleep book. So that is the last one that I'm going to talk about in this video. So that was 14 books in like 24 minutes. So I'm really proud of myself for how fast I went through those. Like I said, I have videos for a lot of these, so check in the description box if you want a lot more information on any of these. And I will hopefully be posting another one of these videos really soon because I already have read a couple more books after this one that I want to talk about. So I will catch y'all in my next video. Bye.